Do that. There you go, Steve. I'll introduce this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Democracycast. This is Dean Edwards in Salem, Oregon for Democracy Watch News. Today, we're investigating news coverage and reports about the current situation in Sudan. There's a lot going on. A lot of it's very confusing. And between these reports, we hope to bring clarification. To begin with, we're going to focus on how the media is covering the Sudan events, the events in Sudan. For Democracy Watch News, it's a lot of Twitter spaces, a lot of discussions with people, a lot of messaging, a lot of listening. In Democracy Watch News, the page we have on LinkedIn, there is an article that I wrote about what it's like as a journalist when you're in these meetings and you have a general idea of what somebody is talking about, but you don't speak the language, which means you don't know the grammar, you don't know the words, except maybe a few terms that you've picked up over the years. And occasionally there's a little English in there, and that helps. But apart from that, how do you fathom? How do you understand the depths of what people are feeling and saying? And in the end, I was left with a emotional perception, which doesn't fact check it. It just gives me a sense of the people. And when you take individual cases and combine them together, you're left with a composite sense of the seriousness and the compassion, the anguish, and the hopes of the people that are there, especially their confidence and commitment. And I wrote about this. You'll find it in LinkedIn. If you search for Democracy Watch News, you'll find the article. It's under 2,000 characters, which fits their limit, and it's one of my better pieces. I'm very, very pleased with the way it turned out. So, and it's meant to be translated into Arabic. Having said that, that's what we've been doing. We're going to be continuing these reports on Democracycast. We're going to be continuing to develop our relationships with people around the world in various democracy movements and on other issues and events that are important for building and sustaining healthy democracies. But let's go to Toronto. We have a guest here from Toronto who's established a community television station and service. It's the first in Canada to be focused exclusively on Africa. I find it to be an amazing development, having worked in community radio and been exposed a little bit to community television. For somebody to be able to do this on this kind of level, it's a fascinating thing to observe. And only in the 21st century could we have seen this. This would not have been possible in the 20th century. So let's go to Toronto. And sir, if you could introduce yourself, your television service and station in Toronto, and give us a sense of and an understanding of how you were founded, why you exist, and how this applies to the struggles for democracy in Sudan. Once again, this is Dean Edwards in Salem, Oregon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity right there, Dean. I appreciate bringing me on this engagement today. My name is Babajide Alao, and I'm actually representing DaugembassyTV. Like I mentioned earlier, our organization started with a purpose and passion of engaging Africans across the world, changing the world one aid at a time. The reason why we started this is because we have seen way out of time that the situation about our country, the situation about Africa as a continent, as a continent as it is, someone has to actually step up. And a lot of people have been doing a lot of things on their own angle. A lot of individuals, Africans, I would like to put it in this way. A lot of us are actually trying to become a leader from wherever we are, leading from different angles, leading from different perspectives, in the name of, working towards a better Africa for sure. So Embassy TV started in 2018, and we started from my basement down here in Toronto, and we just started because I was looking at the situation of the country. I've been a very vocal activist, especially from Nigeria, and I've been speaking, especially against speaking the truth to power, especially against any form of maladministration, any form of corruption from the present administration. And with that being said, we decided, you know what, there needs to be a media that actually is able to speak, speak a lot more without any form of influence from the government. Because a lot of the media currently in the country where I come from, Nigeria, are actually really, really being influenced. Most of them are either being owned by the government, or some of them are owned by political parties. So speaking truth and helping the general populace in understanding, how things work, and helping them understand, giving them a better mindset towards fixing the problems of the local country became a problem. So what we decided to do, because we understand again, working as a free media from within Africa or from within Nigeria can be a problem, especially when we have a lot of government influences one way or the other. They could try to shut you down, especially with what is happening in Sudan with lack of freedom of press in Sudan. We've noticed since October 25, a lot of stations, media stations have been shut down. Workers in media stations have been arrested. The prime minister's put behind bars. The internet disconnected. Why? Because if you're working to liberate our people from within the country, sometimes that becomes challenging. So what we decided to do was to set up a media outside of Africa and be able to project some of the ideas that can help us liberate ourselves completely. And we've been doing this since 2018 successfully. We've grown our Facebook page up to about 50,000 followers on Facebook. We're still learning on Twitter. We started Twitter accounts about just early this month, and we've already grown to about almost 300 followers already on Twitter. So we're learning we're taking advantage of all different means and channels of social media to reach and engage Africans worldwide, to see how we can the mindset of our people, advancing education, and promoting investigative journalism to ensure that we continue speaking truth to power and helping Africa liberate itself. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak again.
No, what you're doing is extremely important. In fact, in regards and but Africa seems to be ignored. I'm subscribed to a number of news services and news feeds, and I get news from Asia, from South America, from the rest of the world, and yet Africa is this. It's almost like it doesn't exist to many people. So I really appreciate what you've done. I've been looking at your website. Nice job on that. And yeah, it's just so important. And the thing about Africa to me is that it's an amazing continent that is composed of different countries. And this goes, Dean, this is one of the things that I guess I perhaps object to in terms of what you were saying earlier, because one needs to look at Africa as a unique continent. And so Western, it's like forcing, Western ideologies on the Chinese. You can't do that. You can't force Western ideologies on Africa.
And that's, John, if I may, that's exactly what we did. On the other hand, when I mentioned John Locke, and I erred in not mentioning it today, I said that outside of the Euro-American experience, it is best to view Locke as an inspiration, and then we have to enter into a dialogue. Our people in country have to enter into a dialogue and examine their traditions, their customs. And as Noah Nash pointed out to me, you've got to decide what democracy means in Ghana or in your country. What does it mean for you according to your traditions? And those are dialogues that need to be had. They need to, and I've been discussing that with the Sudanese, and it's interesting because when we talk about it being an inspiration, but not a requirement, it opens up the possibilities. And I don't know where that conversation goes, but the foundations of what Locke talked about are so basic that it gives, when you get down to the foundations of what he's saying, it gives the freedom to examine what your cultural traditions are, with the use of age sets, the use of other traditions. Different peoples have different, the Ashanti are very different from the Igbo, for instance, and the people who are more Arab in culture are very much different from, say, the newer, the Dinka, when the country was whole, in Sudan. So there's a lot of possibilities to allow people to explore and develop their own approaches to these questions. But the questions they've never been allowed that. The British came in, the French came in, the Dutch came in, and others, Portuguese, and they said, this is what you're doing, deal with it. That's exactly what you're objecting to, and I would have to agree with it.
Yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago. So anyway, I mean, it's good to see this. I mean, a question, I guess, for you then, why aren't we seeing news from Africa? Why does there seem to be this disinterest in what's going on in Africa, unless it's something, violent or, horrendous that's happened there? We don't hear much about Africa at all here.
We go back to Toronto.
It's Babajide, right?
Yes, I was gonna actually, if you don't mind me, just contribute a
Yes,
little
sir.
bit there. So I see where you're coming from, Dean. I completely see where you're coming from there. It's the way we see it is this, the whole world is a global village where people are people, right? And of course, the history has played a huge role in shaping the way things have actually happened, across the continent for sure. Now, how do we move forward progressively? I believe strongly in global partnership. I believe strongly in understanding our history as well, especially because that helps us in shaping forward, the right solutions, for the future. And I get where you're coming from, everyone needs to be able to define, what democracy should look like, for their own people. Now, with that being said, still, John, you mentioned that there isn't a lot of news, media outlet projecting more information about Africa. There's a reason why things are like this, and that's why we are trying to do things differently. We are trying to promote a lot of information, and project more images, the way Africa is. We're gonna share it. If it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good, so that we can find solutions together, so we can fix these things moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I really like that concept of finding solutions together, because as you said, we really are one world. And, I think we need to get over, a lot of issues to do with tribalism, racism, all of those isms, and really come together. And, one of my interests, I'm going to deviate here for a second, but just before I was joined this call, I was in another conference that was in virtual reality in AltSpace VR. And in fact, we were talking about the exact same thing, because we had people from Germany, from Israel, the US, and a couple of other places where, the world is starting to, again, it happened with, well, the telephone is probably the telegraph, I guess, if we go that far back, but communication has helped open up the world to people. And have you had any experience with virtual reality at all?
You're right. So the world is changing, and in the past, we've had Web 1, Web 1.0, Web 2.0, and now we're moving into Web 3.0 now, which is
Yes,
the
right.
metaverse. So I have had a lot of experience lately now, since, since a lot of, inception of blockchain conversations. I've been in a couple of different virtual meetings and engagements, and it's been amazing. And when I've been there, I haven't seen, just like you said, the labels, I haven't seen the labels where you have the issues of racism, issues of, tribalism, issues of color as well. Those are not evident right there because, everyone comes up as different avatars, right? So it's really wonderful what decentralization is coming up as with. And I see where you're coming from there. So well, for sure, there are solutions that are going to come up that we would definitely have to look into. But of course, we still have to come down to the micro level, which deals with humans healing through some of the issues of issues of histories, and then having those dialogues like you mentioned earlier in moving forward.
Yeah, no, definitely a lot of healing to do. I'm fascinated by the fact that you're talking about blockchain, and one of the articles that I skimmed through on your website had to do with the currency. I think it went back to June of this year, but Nigeria's currency being devalued. But one of the things I've been hearing about Nigeria a lot is that it's become the crypto center of Africa. Would you care to comment on that? Or?
Well, that's speculative, and I would say that because there's a lot of different antics from the present administration to scare people away from the blockchain. But I would go to the country like Ethiopia, which is actually going through crisis at the moment with the TPLF. We're here because of the issues going on across Sudan, and Ethiopia is out there with its own issues as well. But before the issues with the TPLF, I'm not sure if you're aware, there is a blockchain technology that actually partnered up with the country Ethiopia, the country's education system. And so they introduced blockchain to the country's education already, and integrating that and ensuring that things become a lot better and improving a lot faster. So I would say Ethiopia has actually been a very great country in spearheading innovation, in Africa for sure.
So what type of infrastructure did they put in Ethiopia? Fiber or 5G, or what are they running there?
So it's more or less of I would call it's Cardano blockchain.
Oh, Cardano, yeah, no, sure.
The Cardano blockchain, yes, that's the one that has integrated with the country Ethiopia.
Interesting. Yeah, I actually own some Cardano. Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to look at the concepts of decentralization, particularly when it comes to currencies, because I mean, South Africa, for instance, was always very, very, very stingy when it came to foreign exchange. When one left the country, one was only allowed to take out, I think, well, Zimbabwe was the worst, 150 US dollars, and what can you do with $150? Not much.
Well, these are some of the issues that we hear about. Issues about sanctions around Zimbabwe, corruptions around Zimbabwe, issues around Africa generally, right? So, back to the topic on on the press freedom, in Sudan.
Let me interrupt real briefly and say we've been joined by Mark Taylor Canfield, who is our editor for Press Freedom, and he's in Seattle, Washington. So go ahead, sir.
Nice to meet you, Mark. Nice to have you as well. I was just curious to understand, curious to learn more about, what Democracy Newscast has been doing, especially with issues across Sudan.
Hi,
This is
go ahead, Mark Canfield from Seattle, Executive Director for Democracy Watch News. I hesitate to speak because it seemed like you were in mid sentence there, and I wondered if you want to continue talking about those press issues that before I just came on here.
My apologies. I think it's okay. You can go ahead, please. Thank you, sir.
Yes, well, I mean, Africa is a focus for us right now, and I think that our some of the Twitter space conversations, a previous conversation about the sanctions in Zimbabwe are all very important because we see this as a niche that's not being filled, especially in the United States. So that's one reason why I think we would like to focus on Africa. As a editor for press freedom, of course, there are challenges to press freedom all across the planet right now, unprecedented in a way that I haven't seen before. So Africa is one of those places where it's very important that we spread the news and that we begin to work with groups like Reporters Without Borders, the Committee to Protect Journalists, and other organizations that are focused on the rights of journalists and protecting advocacy for freedom of the press around the world. So anything that you and your organization covers on that would be very interesting to us, and maybe we can partner on some of that. I actually wanted to ask you a couple of questions that are not directly related to freedom of the press, if you don't mind. And that's because I was looking at your website and I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of information about a couple of the initiatives that the organization is involved with. One being the Dream Again Youth Foundation, and also the Tell the Right Narratives hashtag. Can you talk a little bit about those two initiatives that you guys are involved with?
Absolutely. So that's a very good question for sure. So let's start with the Dream Again Youth Foundation. So with the Dream Again Youth Foundation, that's a non-for-profit organization right there in Nigeria that has been going about, reforming prisoners, incarcerated inmates that are in Nigerian prisons. So they go about there, providing a library for them so they can read as well, learn to read and write. Because a couple of them actually are in crime because, they don't have the education. They go about, providing, skill training development as well for each individual. So maybe some of them could learn farming, some could learn, many different skills. Farming, there's coding as well, computer literacy. So this is some of the things that the Dream Again Youth Foundation has been doing across Nigeria, and I think they also have partnership also in Malaysia. So they go about conducting some of these activities as well. So we partnered up with them to ensure that we can strengthen the organization, providing funding to them, and also sponsoring individual inmates within that program. So that was what we did there. So now with the Tell the Right Narratives is all about, like I said earlier, engaging Africans and changing the mindset of our people by revisiting some of our histories and doing some deep dive analysis into some of those histories that have been misrepresented in the past, to ensuring that we have the right information moving forward.
You also have some kind of a partnership with Amnesty International Canada. How does that work, and how do you work with Amnesty on that?
So that's a good question. So we partnered up with Amnesty International, providing them funding on a month-to-month basis, especially just in our own way of ensuring that we can support their goals as well.
As far as our press freedom initiatives, one of the things that we like to do is to do regular podcasts, of course, and I've been starting to do a series of reports on press freedom issues around the world. So in future, we will definitely be following what your organization is doing, and looking for information that maybe we can't find other places on that issue. So I thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a very great conversation.
Always a pleasure. And just like you said, the freedom of the press is something that we take very seriously on our end. There's a reason why I can't go to Nigeria for now, because a lot of activities that we have done based on our organization, the present administration frowned terribly on it, and we have been blacklisted. So if I arrive in Nigeria at the airport, a lot of journalists that haven't even that have worked with us have been arrested already. So that's why we choose to stay here in Canada and actually promote freedom of press from this area here. Canada has been a great country promoting human rights. I wouldn't say it's the best in 100%. Of course, everyone has had their history, but we're all moving better. We're all moving forward in the future to ensure we get better.
Yes, Reporters Without Borders does have a section on Nigeria. Currently, Nigeria is ranked 120th in the world in terms of press freedom. So yes, there needs to be a lot of improvement. It's actually lost 5 points in the ranking since 2020. And of course, there'll be a new ranking coming out soon with the new year from Reporters Without Borders. But it's considered, according to Reporters Without Borders, one of West Africa's most dangerous and difficult countries for journalists who are, according to Reporters Without Borders, are often spied on, attacked, arbitrarily arrested, or even killed. So, number one, glad that you're safe where you are, and let's do what we can to spread the word and open up that country for journalists, because it's an intolerable situation at this point, and it's something we must speak out against.
Absolutely. As at last year, October 2020, there was a protest that happened at Lekki Expressway toll gate with hundreds and hundreds of Nigerian young youths, civilians, unarmed protesters that were holding the Nigerian flag. If I tell you, if you can go back in the history, you can go back and Google and search it. The Nigerian government sent out the Nigerian military, just in the same thing that's happening in Sudan, to shoot live ammunitions, rounds of ammunitions at Nigerian people, killing dozens of Nigerians. They refuted the information, they shut down the media, they turned the country black just to ensure that no one would hear about anything. However, 1 year up to now, a new report just came out from the Lagos State Panel of Justice that investigated on the situation, confirming that every single thing that happened was true. The government did send out the military to shoot at its own citizens. So these are some of the issues. And not only that, there was a lady who actually did a live reporting on the incident while it was happening, while the soldiers were shooting at the citizens. She was right there with a mobile phone doing a live stream on Instagram, showing it there. The government tried to kill her. Luckily for her, she was able to get an asylum here in Canada, and she's safe here with us. So these are some of the issues that we've been dealing with, across Africa, not only Nigeria. And look at what is happening in Sudan. These are some of the, shameful thing that we see from our government that we're looking to find a solution. Africa as a whole has a large population of young people, and we don't see that representation within our government. And these are some of the things that we need to change. I think the more we find people that look like us in government, they understand our situation, understand where we're coming from, the more we can find a solution moving forward. Some of these are the solutions that we are projecting for our people moving forward.
I should mention too that according to RSF, there are more than 100 independent newspapers in Nigeria. So it's not that there aren't many sources and many people trying to tell the story, but they are subjected to an online cybercrime law, which is widely used to arrest and prosecute journalists and bloggers in an arbitrary manner. And then, as you mentioned, actual violence against protesters and journalists with reporters have been attacked. Several news organizations have actually been torched, set on fire. So yeah, something that we really need to keep an eye on. Thank you so much for that report.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So how could we collaborate with you? How do you see that working? Have you thought about that? Or Dean, have you two spoken?
We've only spoken once before, and we have exchanged some messages, but we start out partnership and collaboration with an agreement to find a way to work together and to be supportive. And if we can establish that initial handshake agreement, we move on from there, and we're just in the very early stages of even agreeing to that first principle. So if we can do that today, that's a beginning. And then we can explore what's appropriate, because the way we work with news organizations is going to be different than the way we work with a non-governmental organization or with an activist movement. For instance, with the people in Sudan, what I've been doing is listening to them, trying to make certain that I understand what it is that they're saying. Am I interpreting it in a way that they believe is accurate? How would they explain it to me? What would they clarify? And that dialogue is very important. Being able to talk to people in Khartoum, being able to talk to people in the diaspora around the world has been very enlightening to me. Well, this came up last night also on Writer's Circle, and I was asking about how it is that they do what they do to help people write. And in talking about the news service, I pointed out to them that working with peoples around the world, listening and projecting their voices and giving them opportunities to be heard, it's made me a better person, because the intolerances that we all acquire through our lives melt away when you become familiar with individuals and peoples and you start working with them, particularly when you're in a job setting and you're working with them. It's very enlightening. And when you develop friendships, that's the thing that really tears down barriers. And that's the great gift of the 21st century, is that we can do that. So in answer to your earlier question, I've been working very closely with Kefa, with Numeri, with Dr. Mohammed, with a gentleman named Adil, and a lot of others. Suzanne, who's an incredible facilitator, media facilitator. She's very, very sharp and to the point, and she likes to keep it professional. And I noticed that in the part of the world where women have to struggle even more than in the United States, she commands respect in a way that reminds me of my great-grandmother. And that's another story for another time, but an amazing lady. And so there are people out there in the diaspora, people in Khartoum, and they've got their internet back, so that, at least last I checked. So I've been able to engage with some of them. We're starting to see the Sudan Tribune come back and start publishing again on a limited basis after having cyber attacks on their facility. And there's a lot going on. What we do is to try to engage and to work with people to make sure the stories are being covered. And if that means that we cover nonviolent conflict, if that means somebody has something on the violent conflict, we point them over to somebody who can cover that, because no one organization can do it all. But together, we can provide a chorus. And like a good Greek drama or comedy, that chorus can be essential. So does that also answer your question about what we've been doing as Democracy Watch News with the people in Sahara and their struggles?
For sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Dean. Now, when you talked about issues of how can we partner, I appreciate the fact that this was a great introduction, getting to know one another here. It's amazing. It's something that we really, really, really value. Now, remember I mentioned earlier, we believe strongly in global partnership, especially if we're going to solve the issues of Africa. Something that we believe that once Africa is solved, Africa's problem is solved, the whole world's problem is solved. There's no issues of hunger, world hunger, issues of illegal immigration across the world. Just so many issues, even crime rate could go down. These are some of the things that we believe strongly. Now, how do we get there? It's not, I don't believe it's something that one person can do on its own, for sure. And that's why partnership and partnering is something we can consistently and continuously do. currently right now in the issue of Cameroon. There's an Anglophone crisis going on right now in Cameroon, whereby the large majority of a certain a group that speak French believe that the English speakers should not exist, which doesn't make any sense because even the official language of the country states clearly that it is English and French. So that should allow people to live harmoniously together, but there is way deeper rooted issues within the country that, of course, leads back to the history again. Now, how have we been working with them? We've been working with a lot of Cameroonians that are actually on ground, reaching out to journalists right there, activists, and different groups of people that are working towards making Cameroon a better place. We work with some of them by providing relief materials, relief support. We work with others by providing they provide information as to what is happening because again, like I said, there is that restriction of information, press freedom of press again within Cameroon. Africa generally has a problem, and we help them in promoting such information, such news, out to the world, so that the world is aware of what is happening within this country. And so these are some of the ways we're partnering. And so I don't know, what are some of the opportunities that you have seen within us that you would like to leverage on?
I have a comment on that, if you don't mind. First of
Go
all,
ahead.
we do have this weekly video podcast. So any participation from your organization or even, if information that we can get from your website that we can add to our podcast would be helpful. But there is that weekly opportunity for us to have guests to talk about these issues. And also we're in the process of considering going with the Facebook instant articles regime. So we're thinking that that might be a place too. We will be looking for articles to reprint. So that's another possibility, is reprinting of articles. Democracy Watch News, when we do a coverage of Africa, maybe we could share that with you. There are many things that we can do from here out to continue this conversation, but this weekly podcast is definitely a place that we can start in, and the instant articles. And then we also have our Thursday Democracy International press briefings. So every Thursday we also have usually at least a 3-hour session where we have guests to talk about these kinds of issues. And also it's an opportunity for us to have meetings and discuss future opportunities for collaboration. So I would like to keep the door open and continue to communicate. I think that would be a very important thing too, is for us to continue to communicate back and forth, to participate in Twitter space conversations, in our Zoom podcasts, and then our instant articles with Facebook. And we're in the process right now of actually gathering some articles to submit to Facebook for that program. So, and if you have any ideas, please feel free to share them with us. And if there's anybody else on this call that has an idea about how we can increase collaboration, please let us know.
For sure. Thank you so much for that. I mean, we're definitely open as well to partnership and to continuous conversation. We've always come from that belief and school of thought that trust is not given, trust is earned, right? So we look forward to earning your trust over time as well. And as you also look forward to earning our trust as well too, because that's something that we believe strongly in. Now, again, when it comes to sharing of information, we're more than open to sharing information with your organization. We're more than open to participating and joining some of your guests, be as a guest in some of your engagements as well. Dog Embassy TV studio will be live because we're upgrading, getting new equipment to make sure that we are able to project better content and better quality out to our people. Now, once that is done as well, we'll be more than happy to send invitations to you to come on board and participate, be a guest in some of our program as well.
That would be wonderful. I really appreciate that. And we will definitely use, with your permission, your news organization as a source for our reports
I
as
might
well.
also add that we've
Great.
got two initiatives that we will be developing over the next year. The first, of course, is our correspondence, and the correspondence will be people that we make agreements with, and they will receive very generous portion, the majority indeed of revenues that come in from their stories. And with the idea, we want to get multiple distributions of their content. And in doing so, we will become a very continuing relationship with. So we'll be distributing, hopefully, well over 1,000, maybe much more than that, correspondence spread around the world, including 110 traditional tribal correspondence, which is an area that offers huge potential everywhere in the world. The other thing is that we were asked to develop, and it didn't quite happen. So we have the plans in place, spreadsheets and everything to support it. Is a hyperlocal news program. And that's where we work with community radio and community media around the world to help provide them with targeted content for their areas. And that's an exercise in developing networks that go beyond what the regular news service does. But through these partnerships and a desk in our media services department, we'll be creating a subsidiary to handle that work, so that we can develop and track who our contacts are in the communities around the world, who can help us verify that these events indeed took place. This information is accurate, people have direct personal knowledge of it, etc. It's going to be a huge undertaking. And by working with different communities around the world, we hope to selectively add to that. And those are the two things that will generate content. And we want to make sure our people are getting paid, and anybody we work with, that there's a fair distribution of assets. Right now, we are all volunteers. We want to change that and get our funding together, our bylaws revised. And John tells me that we've pretty much reached the end of this segment. It's about time to move over and set up the Twitter Spaces. So if people could sign off and give your sign off and a brief comment, I would appreciate it. This is Dean Edwards. I'm the International Coordinating Editor for Democracy Watch News. Thank you for joining us on Democracycast. And gentlemen, if you could each sign off and tell us where you are, I'd appreciate it.
This is Mark Taylor Canfield, Executive Director for Democracy Watch News and Editor for Press Freedom in Seattle, Washington. Thank you all for joining us.
This is Steve Barnes. This is Steve
apologies.
Barnes in Hilo, Hawaii, audio production person. Thank you. This is wonderful.
Thank you so much for that, Barnes. I apologize for interrupting you there. This is Babajide Alao from DaugembassyTV, live from Toronto, Ontario. Thank you so much again for having me here. It was a pleasure.
Yes, no, thank you. Really enjoyed the conversation, and I look forward to our future talks and getting the news from Africa out there. So thank you very much. So that's
That's a wrap, gentlemen.
We're
It's
going
time
to
for me to leave and